Finn steps through the wrought iron gate, its hinges singing a soft note into the evening air. The enchanted garden spreads before her like a living tapestry, each pathway curving away into pools of shadow and moonlight. The scent of jasmine drifts on the breeze, sweet and heavy, mingling with the sharper perfume of night-blooming honeysuckle that climbs the stone walls in cascading curtains. She follows the main path, her footsteps creating a gentle rhythm on the smooth river stones that have been worn pale by countless seasons. To her left, a border of white roses glows like captured starlight, their petals so perfect they seem carved from pearl. To her right, deep crimson blooms nod on tall stems, their faces turned toward the rising moon. The garden breathes around her. Leaves whisper secrets to one another in the oak trees. Overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a fountain murmurs its ancient song. Finn pauses beside a climbing rose that has wound itself around a wooden trellis, its coral pink flowers releasing their fragrance into the warm air. She touches one petal with the tip of her finger. Silk and velvet combine, still holding the day's warmth. A cricket begins its evening serenade from beneath a lavender bush, soon joined by another, and then another, and then another, until the garden fills with their gentle chorus. Finn continues along the path as it winds between raised beds, where herbs release their essence with each rush of the breeze. Rosemary, sharp and clean. I'm earthy, warm. Mint, cool and bright. The path opens into a small clearing where an ancient oak spreads its branches like a protective umbrella. Beneath it sits a wooden bench, its surface smooth from years of use, carved with simple flowers along its edges. Finn settles onto the bench, feeling the solid warmth of the wood beneath her. The oak's trunk rises beside her, its bark deeply furrowed and soft with moss in the crevices. From here, she can see the heart of the garden, a small fountain where water spills from a carved stone lily into a circular pool. The water catches the moonlight and throws it back in dancing fragments, creating patterns of light that shift and flow across the surrounding flower beds. The sound is like gentle rain on leaves, constant and soothing. A night breeze stirs the garden, carrying with it the layered perfumes of a dozen different flowers. Finn breathes in deeply, tasting the sweetness on her tongue. The air feels soft against her skin, neither warm nor cool, but perfect, like silk scarves brushing her arms and face. She rises from the bench and follows a narrower path that leads away from the fountain, past beds of sleeping daisies and tall grasses that sway like dancers in the gentle wind. Here, the moonlight filters through the leaves above, creating a shifting pattern of silver and shadow on the ground at her feet. The first fireflies begin to appear as full darkness settles over the garden. One blinks near her shoulder, a tiny green star that appears and vanishes like a shy smile. Then another glows near the fountain, and another glows near the fountain, and another among the rose bushes, until the garden begins to sparkle with their gentle lights. Finn stops beside a patch of night-blooming cereus, their large white flowers just beginning to unfurl their petals to the moon. She watches one bloom slowly opening, its movement so gradual she can barely perceive it, yet undeniable, life unfolding in its own perfect time. The path curves past a small arbor, covered in climbing jasmine, its white star-shaped flowers glowing in the darkness, like a constellation brought down to earth. Finn passes beneath it, the flowers brushing the top of her head with their soft petals, releasing another wave of that intoxicating fragrance. Beyond the arbor, the garden opens into another small space where herbs grow in neat rows, chamomile with its tiny daisy faces, lemon balm spreading in fragrant mats, and tall fennel swaying on delicate stems. Each plant seems to glow with its own inner light in the moonbeams, creating a silver-green tapestry that shifts gently in the night breeze. A barn owl calls from somewhere beyond the garden walls, its voice hollow and musical. The sound echoes once and fades, leaving only the whisper of leaves and the distant song of the fountain. Finn finds herself at the edge of the herb garden, where another path leads away into deeper shadows, promising new discoveries in the gentle darkness ahead. The fireflies dance more freely now, their lights creating trails of gold and green that linger in her vision like memories of light. She follows the shadowed path deeper into the garden's heart, where ancient lavender bushes line both sides, their purple spikes heavy with evening dew. The stems brush against her legs as she walks, releasing clouds of their drowsy perfume into the still air. A cricket begins its rhythmic song from somewhere in the darkness, joined by another, then another, until the night fills with their gentle chorus. Finn pauses beside a withered sundial, its bronze face dark now, but still beautiful, surrounded by sleeping poppies that will blush crimson with tomorrow's dawn. The lavender path winds downward now, leading Finn away from the herb garden toward the sound of gentle water lapping against stone. The air grows cooler as she walks, carrying with it the mineral scent of deep water and the green smell of reeds. Through a gap in the hedgerow, she catches her first glimpse of the lake, a perfect mirror reflecting the deep purple sky of twilight. The path opens onto a crescent of smooth pebbles that curves along the water's edge. Finn steps onto the shore, her feet finding purchase on stones worn round by countless seasons of gentle waves. The pebbles shift softly beneath her weight, making a quiet sound like whispered secrets. She pauses at the water's edge, watching as tiny wavelets catch the last light of evening and throw it back in silver ripples. The lake stretches before her, wider than she had imagined from the garden above. Its surface is so still that the reflected sky seems deeper than the real one, creating a world within a world where clouds drift in liquid space. A single star appears in both skies simultaneously, twinkling once in the heavens and once in the dark water below. To her left, a withered wooden dock extends into the lake, its planks silvered with age and softened by years of rain and sun. Finn walks along its length, her footsteps muffled by the thick moss that grows between the boards. The dock sways almost imperceptibly with her movement, a gentle rocking that matches the rhythm of her heartbeat. At the end, she kneels and trails her fingers in the water, surprised by its warmth, like silk that has been left in summer sunshine. A pair of swans emerge from the reeds on the far shore, their necks curved in perfect S-shapes as they glide across the darkening water. They move without effort, their passage marked only by the faintest V-shaped wake that spreads behind them and gradually fades. Their reflections follow beneath them like shadows made of liquid light, stretching and contracting with each small ripple. Finn rises and continues along the shoreline, where cattails grow in thick clusters, their brown velvet heads nodding in the evening breeze. She brushes her hand against one as she passes, and it releases a small cloud of downy seeds that drift across the water like tiny dancers. The reeds whisper together in voices too soft to understand, their conversation punctuated by the gentle plash of water against the muddy bank. A great blue heron stands motionless in the shallows. So still, it might be carved from stone, until it turns its head with deliberate grace to watch her pass. Its yellow eyes hold an ancient patience, and Finn finds herself moving more quietly, not wanting to disturb this creature's evening meditation. The heron's reflection wavers slightly in the water, doubling its elegant form. The shore curves around a small inlet where lily pads float like green plates set for a fairy banquet. A few late water lilies still bloom among them, their white petals glowing in the gathering dusk. Finn crouches beside them, breathing in their subtle fragrance cleaner than the garden roses, with a coolness that speaks of deep water and hidden roots. A small frog plops into the water nearby, sending concentric circles spreading across the surface. Beyond the lily inlet, she discovers a grove of weeping willows whose branches trail in the water like the hair of sleeping nymphs. Finn parts the curtain of leaves and steps into the green sanctuary they create. Here, the light is filtered and soft, and the sound of the lake becomes muffled and dreamlike. The willow branches sway around her, their leaves making a sound like gentle rain even though the evening air is still. She finds a smooth stone half buried in the sandy shore and works it free with her fingers. It fits perfectly in her palm, flat and warm from the day's sunshine. She steps back to the water's edge and draws her arm back, sending the stone skipping across the surface. It touches down once, twice, 3 times before disappearing with a soft plop, leaving only expanding rings to mark its passage. A nightingale begins to sing from somewhere in the willows, its voice liquid and pure in the growing darkness. The song rises and falls like water over stones, each note perfect and unhurried. Other birds join in from across the lake. The soft hoot of an owl, the distant call of a loon, the rustle of settling waterfowl in the reeds. Finn emerges from the willow grove as the first stars begin to appear in earnest, their light joining the single early star in both sky and water. The lake has grown darker now, its surface like polished obsidian that holds the growing constellation in its depths. She walks slowly along the water's edge, her feet finding the smooth stones by touch as much as sight. A beaver swims past, its wake a silver line across the dark water. It pays her no mind, intent on its evening business, disappearing into the reeds with barely a splash. The water settles back into stillness, reflecting the growing tapestry of stars with perfect clarity. Finn pauses beside a large boulder that sits half in and half out of the water, worn smooth by countless seasons of ice and waves. She climbs onto its sun-warmed surface and settles cross-legged, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the lake's evening symphony. From here, she can see the whole expanse of water, now dark as midnight velvet and scattered with reflected starlight, like diamonds on cloth. The air carries new scents now, the green smell of night-blooming water plants, the earthy richness of the muddy shore, and underneath it all, the clean mineral scent of deep, pure water. A gentle breeze stirs the surface, sending tiny wavelets lapping against her boulder with a sound like contented sighs. In the distance, she can see lights beginning to twinkle along the far shore. Perhaps a cottage where someone is lighting evening candles, or lanterns in windows welcoming the night. The lights reflect in the water as golden streaks, wavering and dancing with each small movement of the surface. Finn slides down from the boulder and continues her walk along the shore, where the path leads away from the lake, with a line of dark trees that promise new discoveries. The trees rise like cathedral pillars on either side of the narrow path, their trunks disappearing into shadows that seem to breathe with the forest's own rhythm. Finn steps between them, leaving the open shoreline behind for this quieter realm where moonlight filters down in scattered coins of silver. Her footsteps make almost no sound on the thick carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves, each step cushioned by years of the forest's gentle accumulation. The air here carries a different weight, thicker, richer, filled with the deep green scent of moss and the clean sharpness of pine sap. Finn breathes it in slowly, tasting the earthiness on her tongue, the way it settles cool and clean in her lungs. Somewhere high above, an owl calls, a long, hollow note that seems to echo not just through the trees, but through time itself, ancient and knowing. The path curves gently to the left, following what might once have been a deer trail, or perhaps just the forest's own logic of root and stone. Finn's fingers trail along the rough bark of an enormous oak as she passes, feeling the deep grooves and ridges that speak of decades weathered and seasons survived. The bark is cool and slightly damp, textured like the skin of some gentle giant that stands guard over smaller, more delicate things. Soft rustling draws her attention to the forest floor, where something small moves through the undergrowth. She pauses, watching, and catches a glimpse of a red squirrel as it darts across the path ahead of her, its tail a bright banner in the dappled light. It pauses at the base of a birch tree, sitting up on its haunches to study her with bright, curious eyes before scrambling up the pale trunk and disappearing into the canopy with a flutter of leaves. The sound of water reaches her ears, not the broad whisper of the lake she has left behind, but something smaller, more intimate. She follows the sound deeper into the woods, where the trees grow closer together and the moonlight becomes more precious, each beam a gift filtered through layers of leaves and branches. The forest floor here is soft with moss, springy beneath her feet like a carpet woven by patient hands. She finds the source of the sound around another gentle bend, a small brook that winds between moss-covered stones, its water dark as tea in the shadowed light. The water moves with quiet purpose, trickling and murmuring over smooth rocks, worn round by its passage. Finn kneels beside it, cupping her hands to catch some of the cool water. It tastes of minerals and mountain snow, clean and sharp against her lips. Along the banks of the brook, she notices small mushrooms growing in clusters at the bases of the trees. They glow with their own pale light, not bright enough to read by, but soft and steady like tiny lanterns left by forest spirits. She touches one gently with her fingertip, marveling at its smooth, cool surface and the way its light seems to pulse gently, as if it has its own quiet heartbeat. The brook leads her deeper still, past a fallen log that has become a garden for ferns and tiny wildflowers. Finn steps over it carefully, noticing how the wood has softened with age and weather, becoming home to beetles and small creatures she can hear rustling in its hollow spaces. Spider has woven its web between two of the ferns, and dewdrops caught in the silk catch what little light filters down, turning the web into a constellation of tiny stars. She follows a bend in the brook and discovers a small clearing where the trees step back just enough to let more moonlight through. Here, the water has carved out a shallow pool, perfectly round and still as a mirror. Night-blooming flowers grow around its edges, pale blossoms that open only in darkness. Their petals white as fresh snow, and their centers glowing faintly yellow in the gentle light. Finn settles on a smooth stone beside the pool, drawing her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. The forest continues its quiet conversation around her. The soft hoot of the owl, now answered by another from across the clearing. The gentle rustle of leaves in a breeze she can barely feel. The patient drip of water from a branch somewhere overhead. A bat flickers past, visible for just a moment as a shadow against the stars, visible through the canopy opening. The reflection in the pool shows her face surrounded by stars and leaves, the boundaries between sky and water, between herself and the forest, seeming to blur in the gentle darkness. But she can feel the heartbeat of the woods beneath her, not just in the stone where she sits, but in the slow circulation of sap in the trees, the quiet breathing of sleeping birds, the patient growth of moss and mushroom and fern. A firefly blinks once, and twice, near the water's edge, its light joining the soft glow of the mushrooms in a symphony of gentle illumination. More fireflies appear, drifting through the clearing like fallen stars that have learned to dance, their lights reflecting in the still pool and doubling the magic of the moment. Finn rises slowly from her stone, reluctant to disturb the peace of the clearing, but drawn by the continuation of the path on the far side of the pool. She steps carefully around the water's edge. Past the night-blooming flowers that release their subtle fragrance as she brushes against them. Sweet and clean, like vanilla mixed with the green scent of growing things. The path leads her toward what looks like an opening in the trees ahead, where the darkness seems softer somehow, touched with a different quality of light. The trees part like curtains drawn back, and Finn steps from the whispering woods into a meadow that stretches wide under the full moon's silver gaze. The grass reaches nearly to her waist, tall stems crowned with seed heads that catch the moonlight like tiny lanterns. A breeze moves across the meadow and waves, setting the grasses to sway and whisper, their motion like the surface of a gentle sea. Finn wades into this ocean of grass, her fingertips trailing through soft seed heads that brush against her palms with the lightest touch. The stems bend and spring back as she passes, releasing the sweet green scent of growing things mixed with something else, night-blooming flowers scattered throughout the meadow like fallen stars. He pauses to examine one of these flowers, kneeling in the soft grass to find a bloom no larger than her thumb, its petals white as fresh cream and open wide to drink the moonlight. The flower center glows pale yellow, and when she leans close, it releases a fragrance both sweet and mysterious, honey mixed with something wilder, like the scent that rises from deep forest floors after rain. The meadow rolls gently before, dotted with these night flowers that seem to pose with their own. Finn continues walking, her feet finding solid earth beneath the grass, occasionally stepping on patches of moss that yield like cushions under her weight. The air moves around her with the perfect temperature of a late summer night, neither warm nor cool, but exactly the temperature of contentment. Above her, the sky spreads like dark velvet, scattered with diamonds. The moon hangs full and round, so bright that it casts her shadow clearly on the grass behind her, and she can see the individual seed heads swaying in the breeze. Stars fill every corner of the heavens, more stars than she has ever seen, arranged in patterns that seem both ancient and familiar, as if she once knew their names. A cricket begins its quiet song somewhere in the grass nearby, joined by another, then another, then another, until the meadow fills with their gentle chorus. The sound rises and falls like breathing, a lullaby woven from the voices of tiny musicians hidden in the green depths below. Finn discovers that the meadow is not empty of trees entirely. A few ancient oaks stand scattered across its expanse like wise guardians, their broad canopies creating pools of deeper shadow on the silver grass. She approaches one of these trees, running her hand along its deeply grooved bark, feeling the solid strength that has weathered countless seasons. Small night creatures rustle in its branches overhead, not with alarm, but with the quiet movements of settling in for sleep. Beneath the oak, the grass grows shorter and softer, creating a natural carpet, then settles here, leaning back against the tree's broad trunk, feeling its ancient solidity supporting her. The bark is surprisingly smooth where it touches her shoulders, worn by wind and weather into gentle curves that seem made for resting. From this vantage point, she can see the entire meadow spread before her, the grass moving in long waves under the moon's steady gaze. The night flowers seem more numerous now, their pale blooms creating a constellation at ground level that mirrors the stars above. A barn owl calls from somewhere across the meadow, one long, haunting note that seems to speak of deep peace and older magics. Near the center of the meadow, Finn notices something that catches the moonlight differently than the grass. The small pond, its surface perfectly still and dark as polished obsidian. She rises from her place beneath the oak, drawn by curiosity toward this hidden mirror in the heart of the grassland. The walk to the pond takes her through the tallest grass yet, stems that reach above her waist and brush against her arms with whispered touches. More night flowers bloom here, larger ones with petals that seem to glow from within, their fragrance growing stronger as the night deepens. A moth dances from bloom to bloom, its wings pale as moonbeams, completely silent in its flight. The pond reveals itself gradually as she approaches, first as a gleam through the grass, then as a perfect circle of still water perhaps 20 paces across. Its edges are soft with moss and bordered by flowers that lean over the water as if admiring their own reflections. The surface is so still that it captures the entire sky, moon, stars, and all, creating a second heaven lying at her feet. Finn kneels at the water's edge, careful not to disturb the perfect reflection. The water is clear and dark, revealing smooth stones on the bottom and the gentle movement of water plants that sway like underwater grass, A small fish rises to the surface, creating one perfect ring that spreads outward, briefly fracturing the reflected stars before the water settles again into stillness. She settles on a patch of moss beside the pond, drawing her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. The meadow continues its quiet symphony around her. The cricket chorus, the whisper of grass in the breeze, the distant call of the owl And underneath it all, a deeper silence that seems to rise from the earth itself. A shooting star traces a brief silver line across the sky, its reflection appearing simultaneously in the pond's dark mirror. Finn watches until it fades, then continues gazing into the water, where the stars seem close enough to touch, as if she could reach down and gather them like flowers. The night air carries new scents as a gentle breeze moves across the meadow. The green sweetness of grass, the honey fragrance of the night flowers, the honey fragrance of the night flowers, and something else, something that speaks of vast open spaces and freedom. The meadow gradually slopes upward at its far edge, where the grass gives way to a line of silver birches that stand like sentinels against the star-filled sky. Finn rises from beside the pond, leaving the reflected stars undisturbed, and makes her way toward these pale trees. Their white bark gleams in the moonlight, marked with dark horizontal lines that look like ancient writing in a language she cannot read. Beyond the birches, she discovers what she has been seeking without knowing. A glade so perfectly circular, it might have been drawn by a careful hand. Ancient oaks form its boundaries, their massive trunks standing well apart from each other, their canopy high overhead, creating a natural cathedral. Between their branches, stars shine down in brilliant points of light, each one clear and distinct in the crisp night air. The floor of the glade is carpeted with moss, so thick and soft it yields beneath her feet, like the finest carpet. Finn kneels and runs her hands across its surface, feeling the tiny leaves that make up this living floor. The moss is cool and slightly damp, carrying the earthy scent of growth and the deeper mysteries of the forest floor. At the glade center grows a single oak, older and more massive than all the rest. Its trunk is so wide that Finn could not wrap her arms around even half its circumference. The bark is deeply furrowed, creating patterns of shadow and silver where the starlight catches on its ridges. Patches of soft lichen grow in the deeper grooves, pale green and silver gray, adding their own quiet beauty to the ancient wood. Finn approaches this grandfather tree slowly, drawn by its presence. She places her palm against its bark and feels something that might be a heartbeat, slow and deep, the pulse of centuries. The tree's roots spread out around its base, some rising above the moss to create natural seats and resting places. Worn smooth by countless seasons, she settles into one of these root hollows, leaning back against the great trunk. The bark against her shoulders is surprisingly comfortable, its roughness somehow perfectly shaped to support her. Above, the oak's branches spread wide, creating intricate patterns against the star-filled sky. Through gaps in the leaves, she can see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like a river of light. A gentle breeze moves through the glade, stirring the leaves overhead with the softest whisper. The sound is like pages turning in an enormous book, or waves lapping at a distant shore. With each breath of wind, a few leaves drift down, landing soundlessly on the moss around her feet. They are still green, touched only lightly by the season's change. The air here carries scents layered like music, the deep earth smell of the moss. the clean green of the oak leaves, and underneath it all, something that speaks of wild lavender growing somewhere nearby. Finn breathes deeply, letting these fragrances settle into her lungs and her memory. Around the edges of the glade, she notices small flowers blooming in the spaces between the great tree's roots. They are tiny things, white as stars themselves, with petals so delicate they seem made of moonlight. Their fragrance is subtle but sweet, adding another note to the glade's quiet symphony of scents. A nightingale begins to sing from somewhere in the canopy above. Its song is liquid and pure, each note falling like drops of silver into the stillness. The bird sings without urgency, as if it has all the time in the world to share its music with the night. Other birds answer from the surrounding trees, and owls gentle hoot, the soft trill of a robin settling for sleep. Finn closes her eyes and lets these sounds wash over her. The nightingale's song seems to weave itself into the whisper of leaves, the distant murmur of the brook she passed earlier, and the almost inaudible sound of her own breathing. Everything in the glade moves in harmony, as if the entire world has found its natural rhythm. When she opens her eyes again, she notices how the starlight filters down through the oak's leaves, creating shifting patterns on the moss around her. Some stars shine through clearly, while others appear as gentle gleams between the moving leaves. The effect is like being inside a living constellation, surrounded by light that dances and changes with each breath of wind. A small creature rustles in the undergrowth nearby, perhaps a hedgehog or a mouse going about its quiet night business. The sound is comforting rather than startling, a reminder that she is not alone in this peaceful place, but part of a larger community of creatures, all finding their own rest in the darkness. The moss beneath her grows softer as she settles deeper into her resting place against the oak. Her breathing slows to match the gentle rhythm of the wind in the leaves overhead. The nightingale's song continues, joined now by the distant call of another bird, their voices creating a lullaby that seems written specifically for this moment, this place. Finn lets her hands rest on the moss beside her, feeling its coolness against her palms. The great oak at her back seems to pulse with slow, ancient life, its presence both protective and peaceful. Above, the stars wheel slowly across the sky, marking the passage of the night with their stately dance. The lavender scent grows stronger as the night deepens, carried on air that grows cooler and more still. In this starlit sanctuary, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the night and held by the ancient strength of the oak, Finn feels herself becoming part of the glade's timeless quiet, her breathing as soft and steady as the whisper of leaves overhead. The rain finds Rosewood Library at the same moment. Luca does. The first drops arrive quietly, tapping against the tall, arched windows with the tentative politeness of a visitor who isn't quite sure they're. Luca steps through the heavy oak door, and the world outside, the damp pavement, the smell of wet stone, the gray evening pressing down over the rooftops, falls away behind the soft click of the latch. The air inside is warm, not the sharp, artificial warmth of a radiator, but something older and gentler, the warmth of a room that has been loved for a very long time. It carries the scent of old parchment. That particular sweetness that lives between the pages of books that have been opened and closed by hundreds of hands over many decades. There is polished wood in it too, and just the faintest trace of something floral. Dried lavender, perhaps. perhaps tucked into a drawer somewhere. Front desk. Luca pauses just inside the doorway, umbrella still in hand. That's the quiet settle. The libraries breathes around Luca in the particular way that old buildings do. A low, contented stillness, punctuated only by the soft percussion of rain, now beginning to fall more steadily against the glass. A wooden stand at the door holds a cluster of umbrellas, their handles curved and patient. Luca adds one more to their number, and the last few droplets slide from the fabric in a soft, unhurried patter onto the flagstone floor below. The library stretches ahead in long, generous rows. The shelves are tall, taller than seems strictly necessary, their upper reaches disappearing into a pleasant dimness that the overhead lamps do not quite reach. Those lamps hang at intervals along the central aisle, their light a deep amber, the color of ornament after novels, casting pools of gold across the mahogany floorboards and drawing long, gentle shadows between the stacks. Luca moves forward, footsteps quiet on the worn wood. The floorboards are smooth here, near the entrance, polished by years of foot traffic, something almost silken beneath the soles of Luca's shoes. Farther in, where fewer people tend to wander, the green of the wood is more pronounced, the surface a little rougher, a little more honest about its age. The shelves begin on either side, and Luca drifts toward the nearest one. The hand rises without particular intention. The fingertips brush lightly along the spines of the books. Cloth and leather and paper, some smooth, some slightly raised where the lettering has been embossed, some soft with a gentle fraying of age. The colors shift as Luca moves. Deep burgundy, forest green, a faded blue, the shade of an overcast sky, cream and tan, and a particular shade of rust that seems to belong entirely to books printed in another century. The rain outside is finding its rhythm now. It comes in steady, even waves against the arched windows, and the sound of it fills the upper reaches of the library like a kind of music, not dramatic, not insistent, but constant and deeply familiar, the way a river sounds when it has been running for 1,000 years. Somewhere deeper in the stacks, a page turns, then another. The sound is so small, so perfectly placed within the larger quiet of the room, that it seems less like an interruption and more like punctuation, a comma in a long, unhurried sentence. There are other readers here, late-night visitors like Luca, though they are invisible from this angle, tucked between shelves or settled into chairs somewhere beyond the reach of the amber lamplight. Past a low table bearing a ceramic vase of dried botanicals, seed pods, and pale grasses, their edges soft with dust, and past a brass reading lamp that has been left on above an empty armchair, its light falling in a worn circle on the cushion below, as though keeping the seat ready for someone. The rain shifts slightly in character, the way rain sometimes does when it has full committed to an evening. It is softer now against the far windows, more of a hiss than a tap, and the sound of it blends with the almost imperceptible hum of the building itself. Low timbers settle, a faint hint of warm air through the high ceiling. Luca pauses beside a shelf with particularly old volumes, their spines so faded that the titles are barely legible, and simply listens for a moment to the layered quiet of the place. There is something about a library in the rain that exists nowhere else in the world. The contrast of it, the weather outside doing what weather does, indifferent and ongoing, and the stillness inside, curated and kept at on. Safe is perhaps too simple a word. Held, maybe. The feeling of being held by a place where the aisle curves slightly to the left and the lamplight grows a little dimmer. A little moment, a narrowing of the passage, a suggestion of space beyond the main corridor, a shadow that has a different quality to the others, something tucked away, something quieter still, if such a thing were possible. Luca's footsteps carry forward, slow and easy, toward the curve in the aisle, whatever waits beyond it, in the warm amber dark. The curve in the aisle draws Luca forward the way a quiet thing always does. Not with insistence, but with a kind of patient gravity. The amber lamplight thins here, softening into something more like candlelight, and the shelves on either side grow taller, or perhaps the ceiling simply feels lower, more intimate, the way rooms do when they have been lived in quietly for a very long time. The floorboards beneath Luca's feet change as the aisle curves. They are narrowing, the planks closer together, and they creak just slightly with each step. Not a sharp sound, but a low, the kind that seems to belong to the building the way a voice belongs to a person. Luca slows, almost without deciding to, letting the feet find the quieter places between the boards, moving through the hush the way one moves through a room where someone is sleeping. The rain is still there. From here, deeper in the stacks, it has taken on a different quality, less distinct, more diffuse, as though the shells themselves are absorbing it, softening its edges until it becomes less a sound and more a presence. It presses gently against the upper windows, those high, arched panes that Luca can no longer quite see from this angle. And the effect is of being very far inside something warm and well-made, while the world outside continues its slow, unhurried work. To the left, a shelf holds a row of atlases, their spines broad and worn, the gold lettering, long since faded to the faintest suggestion of itself. One of them has been pulled slightly forward from the row, as though someone consulted it recently and returned it without quite pushing it all the way home. Luca's hand drifts toward it without particular purpose, fingertips settling on the top edge of the spine. The paper there is cool and slightly rough, the texture of something that has been opened many hundreds of times and has grown soft with the memory of all those hands. The scent of the library shifts here. Closer to the entrance, it was paper and old cloth. The clean mineral smell of a room that has been carefully kept past the atlases and a low shelf of encyclopedias whose burgundy bindings have faded unevenly. In the light, there is something else. Cedar, unmistakably, dry, faintly sweet, the kind of scent that belongs to old furniture and careful preservation. It mingles with the deeper note of worn leather, the particular earthiness of bindings that have been handled and shelved and handled again across decades. And the combined effect is of a smell that feels less like a place and more like a time. Luca follows the cedar scent, the way one follows something half-remembered. The aisle narrows further, the shelves pressing in on either side until there's only just enough space for one person moving slowly, and the light from the main corridor barely reaches here at all. What illumination there is comes from a single, small lamp mounted low on the right-hand shelf. Its bulb no brighter than a candle, throwing a circle of pale sage-colored light across the spines nearest to it. And then the staircase, it is tucked between two shelves so tall that their upper reaches disappear into shadow, and it is narrow, barely wide enough for a person. Its treads one concave in the center from years of careful feet. The banister is dark wood. The banister is dark wood, smooth and cool beneath the hand. It curves slightly as the staircase rises, disappearing after only 7 or 8 steps into a low ceiling space above. There is no sign, no indication of what waits above. Only the cedar scent, stronger now, and the quality of the silence coming from that direction, which is a different quality entirely from the silence of the main floor. The wood is warm from the lamp nearby. The grain of it is raised just slightly beneath the palm. The polish worn away in the places where hands most naturally rest. The first step gives a low sound underfoot, a single quiet note. In the second, Luca is moving through the narrow passage between the shelves, the smell of cedar deepening with each step, the rain above growing incrementally closer and more present. At the top of the staircase, the space opens. Not dramatically, it is still a small room, a tucked-away room, the kind that seems to have been made from whatever space was left over after everything else was built, but it opens. And opening of it has the feeling of an exhale. The nook is low-ceilinged and lined on 3 sides with shelves that reach from floor to ceiling, every inch of them filled. The books here are older still than those below. Their spines cracked and faded, their colors diluted. Dusty tones of things have sat undisturbed for a long time. Burgundy gone to rose, green gone to gray, blue gone to something almost silver in the dim light. A small round window sits in the far wall, barely larger than a dinner plate. And through it, the rain traces slow lines down the glass, each drop catching what little light exists and carrying it briefly before it falls. Beneath the window, angled to catch whatever light the day might offer, sits the armchair. It is large and deep, upholstered in a fabric that was once a rich teal and has softened over time into something more like the color of sea glass. Pale, quiet. The arms are slightly flattened where they have been rested on. The seat cushion holds a gentle depression in its center, the shape of years of reading. A small wool blanket has been folded across one arm, dark gray, its edge slightly unraveled, the kind of blanket that has been washed so many times it has become more soft than fabric, more comfort than cloth. Luca moves toward the chair. The way one moves towards something already familiar. The floorboards up here are bare and close-grained, and they are warm underfoot in a way that the main floor was not. The heat of the lamp below rising gently through them. The cedar smell is strongest here, coming from the shelves themselves. Foot of the chair, very air of the small room, which has been sealed from the rest of the library long enough to develop its own particular atmosphere. On the small side table beside the chair, a table no larger than a footstool, its surface ringed with the pale circles left by many cups of tea, there is a book. It has been left there deliberately, placed with its spine facing up, as though whoever set it down intended to return. The binding is deep red, almost the color of old roses, and the lettering on the spine is gold. Real gold leaf, Luca thinks, the kind that catches light differently depending on the angle, shifting from bright to matte as the eye moves across it. Luca settles into the armchair. The cushion receives the weight of a body with the ease of long practice, yielding slowly. The fabric cool at first, and then warming quickly, conforming to the particular shape of someone sitting still. The wool blanket is within reach, and Luca draws it across without unfolding it fully. Just enough to cover the lap, just enough to add that small additional warmth that makes the difference between comfortable and deeply, completely comfortable. The book comes off the table and into Luca's hands. It is heavier than it looks. The boards are thick. The paper inside dense, cream-colored, the kind of paper that has texture when the thumb rubs across the edge of the pages. The cover, when Luca turns it to read the title, is embossed as well as lettered. Small roses pressed into the red cloth at each corner, their petals raised just enough to feel under the fingertips, intricate and still. Beauty and the Beast. The title sits in its gold lettering on the cover, unhurried and complete, and below it, a single illustration. A rose in a glass case. A rose in a glass case. Its petals rendered in fine ink lines, each one distinct and carefully drawn. Luca opens the book to the first page, and the spine gives a small, soft sound, not a crack, but a sigh. The sound of something opening that has not been opened in some time. The rain on the roof above is close now, meaning a steady and even percussion against the slates. From here, in the armchair, beneath the low ceiling of the nook, it sounds less like weather and more like company. A presence that asks nothing, requires nothing, simply continues its quiet work on the other side of the roof. Above, the round window traces its slow lines of rain against the glass, and the pale light through it is soft and without direction, kind of light that makes the whole room feel like something seen from inside a lantern. Luca's eyes move across the first illustration inside the cover. It is a full page, rendered in ink and pale watercolor wash. A figure in a dark cloak on a road through a winter forest. The trees bare and intricate against a sky, the color of pewter. The lines are fine and deliberate, the kind of illustration that rewards slow looking, where the longer the eye stays, the more it finds. A bird on a branch in the upper corner, a stone wall, half buried in snow at the road's edge, the suggestion of a light far ahead between the trees. Luca's thumb traces the edge of the page gently, following the border of the illustration without touching the image itself. The paper is slightly cooler than the surrounding air, and the ink has a faint raised quality where it is thickest, where the artist pressed hardest into the page. Outside, the rain finds a new rhythm, slightly slower, slightly softer, as though the evening itself is beginning to settle into something more permanent, more decided. The cedar and leather of the air, the warmth of the lamp rising through the floorboards, the wool blanket across the lap, the book open in the hands, all of it arranges itself into a particular stillness, the kind that does not require effort to maintain. The world outside continues its reign. The library below continues its quiet, and in the small book above the stacks, Luca turns to the first page of the story. The first page of the story is a single column of text set in a typeface with just enough weight to feel considered, deliberate, as though each letter was placed rather than printed. The words begin simply, as old stories do. Merchant, the road, the house of daughters, and Luca reads slowly, without hurry, the way one reads when there is nowhere else to be. The rain above continues its soft percussion against the slates, and the lamp beside the chair holds its worn circle steady, and the words move through the mind, the way water moves through a quiet place, without resistance, without urgency. Luca's eyes follow the lines across the page, then down, and partway through the second paragraph, something shifts, not in the story, but in the body, a heaviness, gentle and without weight, settles across the shoulders and along the back of the neck, the kind of heaviness that belongs to evenings like this one, the lamplight and rain and the smell of old paper and cedar with a particular warmth that builds slowly inside wool and cushion and the accumulated stillness of a room that has been quiet for a long time. Luca reads on, but more slowly now. The merchant rides through a forest in the story, and the trees around him are described in careful detail. Branches heavy with snow, the road narrow to a pale line between dark trunks. The silence of a winter wood pressing in from all sides. It is not so different, Luca thinks, from the feeling of this alcove. The stacks below, like close trees, the rain, like the hush of snow, the lamp, like some distant light, glimpsed through the branches. The book rests more fully on the lap now. Luca's grip on it has softened, the fingers no longer holding so much as receiving. The spine of the book resting in the curve of the palm, with its own small weight. The embossed roses at the corners of the cover press, gently into the skin. Just barely, just enough to be felt. Just enough to be felt. 4 small points of texture that anchor the hands to the object, and the object to the evening. Outside, the rain has shifted again. It is softer now, more deliberate. Each drop arriving with a little more space around it than before, as though the sky is becoming more careful, more measured in what it offers. Through the round window above. Through the round window above, the glass is still traced with slow lines of water, but the lines are thinner, and the light that comes through is a deep and even gray, the color of the hour between last light and full dark, the color of a world that has decided to rest. Luca's gaze drifts upward from the page. The skylight above the nook is a small rectangle of that same gray, framed by the dark wood of the ceiling, and against it the rain draws its slow and shifting patterns, a line appearing at the top edge and tracing itself downward, branching once, twice, then reaching the frame and disappearing. Another begins where the first ended. The patterns are never quite the same, yet they're never quite different. Watching them, watching something that has no beginning, no end, only the continuous and unhurried middle. The library below is very quiet. Somewhere in the stacks, far down and distant, there is the soft sound of a page being turned. A single, papery whisper that rises and fades before it can be fully heard. Then nothing again. The silence that follows is not empty but full. The way silence in old buildings always is, as though the walls themselves hold the accumulated quiet of every evening that has passed inside them. The merchant in the story has found the enchanted castle now. Luca can see the illustration on the facing page, a building of pale stone rising from dark gardens, every window lit from within, the light falling across snow in long, warm rectangles. The ink lines are very fine and very still, and watercolor wash over them is the color of candlelight, amber, and cream. And looking at it feels like looking at something that has been waiting a long time to be seen. The wool blanket has warmed completely now. It holds its heat against the lamp with a steadiness that seems almost intentional, as though it has been doing this particular work for years and knows exactly how. The armchair beneath holds its shape around the body with the same quiet reliability. The back at just the right angle. The back at just the right angle. The armrests at just the right height. The cushions still slowly, almost imperceptibly, conforming to the particular weight it holds. Luca's head tips back slightly against the high back of the chair. Not far. Just enough for the neck to soften, Just enough for the ceiling above to come into view. Alongside the skylight, the dark wood beams crossing the plaster in their slow parallel lines. The lamp beside the chair sends its light upward as well as outward, and where it touches the beams, it brings out the grain of the wood, the long, pale lines running the length of each beam, the small, dark knots where branches once were. The smell of the room has deepened with the evening. Cedar and old paper and something faintly mineral from the rain. The scent of water on stone carried in through some small gap in the old building. Mixing with the warmth of the lamp and the dry sweetness of the wool, it is a smell that belongs to no single thing, but to the combination of all of them. The particular atmosphere of this particular place on this particular evening. Unrepeatable and complete. The book is still open on the lap. Luca's eyes return to the illustration. The castle in its pale stone. The lit windows. The snow in the garden below. The figure of the merchant is very small in the foreground. Dwarfed by the gates, and the artist has given him a posture of stillness. One hand raised slightly as though he has just stopped walking and is only now beginning to take in what stands before him. The rain on the skylight slows a little more. The lines of water on the glass grow fewer, the spaces between them wider, the sound of each drop arriving with more silence around it. His fingers rest on the open page. The paper is warm now, warmed by the lamp and by the hands that have held it, and the texture of it under the fingertips is very fine, very smooth, with just the faintest tooth to it, the feeling of something made with care. The lamp holds its light, the rain holds its quiet rhythm, the armchair holds its warmth. The castle on the page glows softly in the lamplight, its windows amber and still. The snow in the illustration is very white and very quiet. The rain on the glass traces one slow line down. Then another, then the sound of it grows very soft, very even, very still.